Welcome to today's presentation. I am with Jennie O'Connor, the Facilitator of Greatness. And today we're going to talk about why it's important to find your passion and how to do that. Thanks for joining me today, Jennie.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to be with you as well. As I was saying to you before we went live, I watch some of your podcasts, and I'm so impressed with your insightfulness and your ability to inspire people. So let's see if we can get some people inspired today. How about that?
That sounds great. That's what I love to do.
So let's talk about you being the facilitator of greatness. How did you come up with that?
So I love this question. There are so many coaches in the coaching space, and this is not a knock on coaches at all. But for some reason, that word to me feels like I'm coming from a place of I have it all figured out and you don't. And that is absolutely not the case.
Right.
I am a work in progress. I do not have it all figured out. I'm a big fan of taking messy action. So a lot of times I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying things and seeing what works. And I truly believe that everybody has the answers inside of them already. So I am a facilitator in the sense that I tease that out of you. I help you find what you already know innately, but somehow, like maybe you haven't been listening to that inner voice inside of yourself. And I help you bring all of that to the surface so that you can be the very best that is possible for yourself.
I love that. And I agree with you on so many levels because I too am a certified professional coach, although I don't call myself a coach because it's a very broad word. And I think for executive coaches and corporate coaches and fitness coaches, in certain areas, it works well for people. But for me, it never worked well. For me, coaching is one of the skills that I have, just like you described, right? So it's a skill that helps us to help our clients flush out, what is it, the root of the issue. And of course, I work as a healer. I have several modalities that I incorporate in my healing work, and coaching is one of them. So I absolutely love that. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about how did you find your passion?
So I am a multi-passionate. That is what my podcast is about. So in other words, I am easily distracted by sparkly things. So to ask how I found my passion is a long circuitous story. So I will do my best to condense it here for you. I have been a lot of things before I became what I call a facilitator of greatness. And it really is largely about, so the very first self-help book I ever read was in my early 20s, and it was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And in it, she talks about shadow artists. And essentially what that means is someone who has a yearning to do something creative, but for one reason or another isn't doing it. And I'm reading this book in, my formative years and thinking to myself, God, this is so sad that there are people that never do the thing and that might go to their grave with their gifts inside of them. Like nothing makes me sadder than that. And the irony is that I did not realize that I was a shadow artist. So what I mean by that is throughout my life, I have pursued a ton of different careers. I always knew I wanted to work for myself. So I have been a costume designer and a wedding planner and an event coordinator and a boutique caterer, like so many different things. And I would go to the effort of getting the certification, building the website, printing the business cards, doing all of the stuff. And then I would literally hide in the shadows, waiting for someone to discover that I was good at what I did. And that is just simply not how business works. You cannot be successful if you are hiding and hoping that you will get noticed. And it was because I was terrified of sales calls. Networking functions scared the heck out of me. I wasn't willing to do the things, clearly out of fear, out of that feeling of not feeling like I was enough. And so I didn't recognize that in myself, because on the other side, I have this strange adventurous spirit. Like, I moved to a foreign country where I didn't know anyone and didn't speak the language. I have on numerous occasions just taken off in my car and traveled around the country and tent camped by myself. So I would have all these conversations with people where they would say to me, like, aren't you scared to do that? And I would go, what are you talking about? No, like, it never dawned on me to be scared of those things. Yeah. And after having that conversation half a dozen times, I was like, oh, I'm courageous. Like, I do brave things. Like, that's really cool. So I was living this double life. Like, what really mattered, the stuff I wanted to do with my life, I couldn't show up for. But over here, I could be like adventurous and cavalier and fun. And so I didn't see the shadow artist in myself for a very, very long time. I just knew that there was something missing. I was lacking this major fulfillment piece. And so a few years back, I did another courageous / foolish thing, because depending upon who you ask, it could be either one. And I packed up all of my belongings and moved my life of 15 years from LA to the East Coast to pursue a relationship with a man I had known for 1 month. And
wow.
Yeah, big leap. In my defense, he was a friend of a friend, so I felt like he was vetted. Like, there didn't seem to be any red flags. And needless to say, it did not work out. But when I say it did not work out, it went down in a blaze of glory. So, like, if you close your eyes and imagine all of the worst things that could happen if you're pursuing a relationship with someone that you don't really know, they happened. So roughly 6 months later, I packed up all my stuff. I was headed back across the country, and I got a text message from an old regular of mine from my bartending days. He was a retired vet. We had become friends across the years, and he said, I'm going to check in on you every once in a while and see how you're doing. And so I get this text from Paul, and it says, how are things going with the guy in Mass? And I was like, oh, no, they are not going. I am coming home. And he said to me, and I will never forget it, he said, well, if you hadn't have tried, you wouldn't have known.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
right. And the thing is, like, that's not like earth-shattering wisdom. But in that moment, it was so profound for me, because here I was at the depths of my despair, at my utter rock bottom. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I would rather have tried and failed like this than to not have tried. And all of a sudden, I was able to look at all of these creative endeavors that I had just been too scared to really give my full effort to. And I was like, what am I doing? Nothing, no failure will ever be worse than this one right now. So I'm going to try everything. Stop it with this imposter syndrome crap. I'm doing it all. And so from that moment forward, I have been driven by a mission to fast track that process for other people. I spent 2 decades in the shadows. I don't want that for anybody else, not on my watch. So that is the story of how I found this passion. There are several side passions still going on to this day, but that is the one that gets me out of bed every morning.
That's just an amazing story, and your bravery really does show up. And so, in my healing work, I was working with a client just this morning who is, I find her to be such a brave person, despite her physical challenges. Yet there's still a block there, and so that's exactly what you're talking about. I was brave in all these areas of my life, but when it came to getting out of the shadows, I had all of this fear. And, my business name, my corporation is less fear, more flow, right? And so fear is the enemy. And we know that. You and I know that as coaches. Fear is the enemy. And we've been under so much fear for the past 2 years.
Mm.
And it takes its toll. So what an amazing story. I absolutely love it. And I applaud your bravery.
Thank you.
Everything you did was brave. It was brave to pack up and move all the way across the country, and then, admit defeat and pack up and move back.
Mhm.
And let's thank Paul, wherever you are, Paul. Thanks for.
Yes. I honestly even feel gratitude towards the guy. I mean, he was
Yes.
a seminal moment for me, a pivot in my life. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for that, because my story involves a tremendous amount of childhood trauma, which then led to an abusive marriage, and that led me to the work that I do now. And that's what makes me the powerful healer that I am. And I look back the same way, knowing that had I not been through all of those challenges, I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
Mm-hmm. I
And
completely
so,
agree. Yeah.
we can't hold on to those grudges. We just can't. We have to, you're right. Thanking him for helping you have that growth experience. So what a
Yeah.
fabulous experience it was.
Yeah.
So let's talk about why it's important for a person to find and follow their passion.
Oh my gosh. I just imagine a world where everybody did what they loved and what lit them up from the inside, and it would be a completely different world than the one that we live in. I just think that enthusiasm is rare and it's contagious. And so it draws people to you, especially if you're looking to create an audience. Or my cat is saying
Your
hello.
cat has joined us.
She wants to be part of the conversation.
It's all good.
If you're trying to meet people, if you're trying to create a social media following, if you are trying to find your super fans, your enthusiasm will just sort of ripple out, and it creates this, like, when you are lit up, you give other people permission to do what lights them up. And I don't think of my work as work. Like, often people are like, what are you doing this weekend? And I'm like, working, because work to me is joy.
Yeah.
So what if all of us could just engage in that every single day? And I mean, I'm not saying work on the weekends, like take time and do the other things that bring you joy. But I just think that when you can find your passion and pursue it and allow yourself, because so many of us, I think, have this block that what we want to do won't make us money, or we're not allowed to. There's so many stories that we tell ourselves, and I just think that we need to free ourselves to at least bring a little bit of that into our lives, even if it is like a hobby that fills your cup. You can't serve others from an empty cup.
Exactly. And I agree. This world could be a completely different place. There are so many people who are what I call actively disengaged, and they just go through the motions of life. They get up, take a shower, have breakfast, walk the dog, go to work, maybe stop for a drink on the way home with friends, come home, kick off the shoes, turn on the tube, and then just do the same routine over and over and over again. And it is possible to truly love your work and have joy and passion just in living life. And as you said, it doesn't have to be a full-time job. You and I both know there are people out there, women who are raising children that probably don't really have time right now, if they've got little ones running around the house, to run a full-time business, but they certainly can start on their hobbies, right? And find something that they're passionate about. And oftentimes that will bloom into a business.
Yeah.
We've seen that story happen many, many times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if it's just so you can show up for your family in a more present and satisfied and happy way, and you're taking 30 minutes first thing in the morning to paint or whatever that thing is for you. I just feel like that is so critical to living the most fulfilled life possible.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think, well, I know for sure that if you have a calling in this lifetime, and some people have a very strong calling, and you don't follow that calling, the universe or God force energy, whatever you choose to call it, will not let you rest until you step up to the plate and swing that bat. I know that one firsthand. So, that's my story. After I recovered from my chronic health condition, I went back into my old career of technology. Like you, I've worn many hats over the years, and because I didn't know how to do this, and eventually, I was just forced to step into my power or be miserable. And so that's how I ended up here.
I feel like sometimes it takes an alarm bell to wake us up to it. A lot of people have a similar story, like a chronic health condition that when they finally stepped into their passion resolved itself. So this is, we don't listen a lot of the times.
Yeah. So if you're, I think you will agree with me, if you're not happy and your relationships or your finances or your career is suffering, there's something going on that you're not paying attention to.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, what would be the first step for someone who says, you know what, I'm not happy? What?
It's a clarity thing. I think, I deal with so many, like, obviously my audience are multi-passionates who often, know they love a lot of things, but where to start. And so if you are just feeling a lack of fulfillment, I think that's still the same place to start. Like, take a look at when you feel most beautiful, most powerful, most in the flow. Like, when do you lose time and forget yourself? Start there. That's going to be the beginning of your list of the things that actually have the potential to light you up long term. And if not, like, do them until they don't light you up anymore. That's fine too. I am nothing if not someone who changes direction all the time. So that's okay too. But getting clear on what those things are, is probably the first piece. And I do a lot of work with people around, like, various ways of gaining clarity. I think knowing what your core values are is so critical, because so many of us are living out of alignment with, first of all, I often ask people what their values are, and they're kind of like, what's a value? Like, we know in some vague sense what a value is, but when you're forced to answer that question, you suddenly stutter and don't know how to answer it. So it's a really illuminating exercise to do, to kind of sit down and say, like, what are the things that matter the most to me in this life? And am I actively showing up in a way that represents that value? So that, in combination with those things that make you lose time, will really help point to what is going to bring you the most joy as you move forward in your life.
I love that. Yeah. Incorporating those values, that is so important, to honor who we are and to honor our values. And oftentimes that's challenging when you're working for someone else.
Mm.
So it is completely possible to be powerful and inspired and happy with your work working for someone else, as long as their values line up with your values. When
Yes.
the company's values don't match your values, there's going to be a problem.
Absolutely. That I think that's so important. I talk a lot with clients about having a good enough job. So maybe what you do for your 9 to 5 isn't like the be all end all, but a
Right.
good enough job is a place where you can go to and then leave the work behind. You don't bring it home with you. You don't perseverate over it all night. It does not certainly make you miserable or feel out of alignment with what matters to you. And you can sort of think of it as like subsidizing your actual dream. But it's so, so important, if that's how you're going to do life for a while, that that job feels in integrity for you. Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I get that because I've had the corporate career, and then I've had the entrepreneurial career. I've switched back off and on throughout my life. And so I know how important that is. And plus working with clients, I know how important that is too. So, and you're right. And the perfect example of what you described is someone who waits tables while they're waiting for their next acting gig, right? Because they want to be an actor.
Yeah. I bartended for years. That was my subsidizing my dream. And my
Oh,
dream changed, but the bartending gig kind of always stayed. And it was a delightful way to meet people. I think
mhm.
that the part of me that likes to help sort of enjoyed the unofficial therapist role
Right.
that a bartender tends to play.
Yeah.
Um, but then, I would reach a point where the hours would wear on me, or the degree of drinking that inherently sort of goes with being a bartender at a dive bar, eventually it wasn't in alignment for me anymore, and I had to really pay attention to that and know when it was time to go. So you just have to listen to that inner knowing, because again, we all have it, and know when this job isn't serving you. It's not providing that thing that feels wholesome and good any longer.
Right. Right. So, with your business, and your clients, with your clients, I should say, what do you find are some of the biggest challenges that people face when they are pursuing their dream career?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I think that creative entrepreneurs face a very specific set of challenges. And this is just from myself and all of the clients that I've worked with. I tend to find that the problems fall into 3 categories. The first one is clarity, like we discussed. The second one is focus, which kind of goes hand in hand with productivity, time management. Those are all sort of lumped together. And then the last is confidence. And I feel like those sort of go in a chronological order. So, like, people come to me and first they need to gain clarity. And then once they have clarity, it becomes easier to focus because they know what the most important thing is that they need to be working on right now. So, time management becomes a little bit easier when you have that focus because you've established that clarity. And then once you've made the thing, whatever the thing is, then you need that little extra push for the confidence to step into the spotlight and to present that thing to the world and to expose yourself to, yes, potentially criticism, but also to all of the accolades that you might receive for making this beautiful thing.
Right. Right. That's good. That's great. Um, so oftentimes, it's that fear again of stepping into your power, don't you think?
Oh,
Yeah. And
yeah.
yeah.
It's fear underscores all of the reasons that we are not doing the thing, even though we might call it something else. It's fear. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I find that again with my clients because fear of the unknown. Who will
Mm.
I be without my chronic health condition? This is all I've known for the past how many ever years, right? So
Yeah.
who would I be on the other side of that? Fear of the unknown is big. That's why your story is so amazing. That you just would go tent camping, jump in the car and go tent camping across the country. That's just amazing. So you were fearless there, but then fear cropped up in other areas, as it does for all of
That's
us,
what's so
right?
ironic to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not scared of bears, but I was scared of criticism,
Yeah.
But I think that's because my work mattered so much to me that I was attaching my identity to it. So criticism of my work became criticism of me as a
Right.
person, and it has taken some work on myself to separate those two things. If I fail, that thing I tried failed. I am not a failure. So that
Exactly.
is the thing I've had to work through myself and thus teach to my clients as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so on your website, I love that you refer to yourself as the creative fairy godmother of mindset mastery. I'm a huge fan of mindset, so let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So here again, these are the stories that we tell ourselves. And what is so interesting about mindset is that these stories run in the background all the time without us even necessarily being conscious of them. And until you stop and listen, like if you were to take a day or a week and just note all of the negative automatic thoughts that come up, like just try to become conscious of them, you'll discover that it's a lot. Ew. Who talks to like other people like that? No one. But we say these mean things to ourselves all the time. But secondarily, so many of these stories do not even belong to us. That's the crazy part. Like, we got them from our parents or our teachers or society as we were growing up, but we never stopped to say, like, do I actually believe this? So, listening to what those stories are, asking ourselves if they're actually ours, and then basically you're faced with a choice. Does this serve me? If not, throw it out.
Yeah.
Write a different story, because our brains don't know the difference between what's real and what isn't, and it will seek out information that corroborates whatever story we're telling ourselves. So if we tell ourselves that all men are unfaithful, we will find unfaithful men. Rewrite that story,
Yes, we do.
and then what you find corroborates that story. So that was just such an interesting thing for me to learn, and that is like a neuroscientific fact
Yeah.
that like we create our realities. So it was so liberating for me to discover that, and that is so much fun for me to go through that process with other people and show them that like this is up to you. Write this story however you want it to look, and I will be the person cheerleading in the background, reminding you that you've got this. Like this is your life. You get to make it look how you want it to.
Yeah, and I do that I give that assignment to my clients. I'll say to them, as you go through your week, pay attention to how you feel, because that's usually where it will come up first. We'll get that icky feeling. And then, so I explain to them, when it doesn't feel good, that's when you want to stop and say, okay, what am I thinking about that's causing me to feel this way? Do I feel like a failure? Uh, am I fearful of speaking to such and such person? And write those things down and bring them back to sessions so that we can work on them. And you're right, we can be so hard on ourselves that I often tell my clients, treat yourself like you would treat your best friend, because you would never talk to your best friend like that. And
Yeah.
even after all the mindset work I have done on myself, I still catch myself, you know, I'll catch myself doing something that doesn't work out too well, and that that voice will come up and say, that wasn't very smart, but I'll catch myself right away.
Even things
So,
that sound super innocuous, like I'm such a dummy or I'm the
right,
worst. Like I hear people say that all the time,
exactly,
I'm the worst. And we just don't even think, stop saying that. Like, I mean, it's taken a
exactly.
lot of training for me to like stop saying any self-deprecating used to be a compliment. Oh, I like that person. She's so self-deprecating. Let's stop being self-deprecating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, it's, and I'm sure you catch your friends, because I catch my friends. So even when I'm not at work, I see it showing up, in the people that I care about and hang around with. And I'll just say, from your lips to God's ears, I mean, you're creating, your
Yes.
words are creating your reality. So,
Yes.
yeah, and it's just a matter of relearning. This is my opinion. You can chime in your thoughts, but it's a matter of relearning, because as you said, we've been taught by society, by our parents, by our teachers, by clergy. We've been taught all of these things, and it's time to ask yourself, is this true for me?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, dump it, because that's your mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, it was so interesting to me to see all of the things that I was unaware of, like a really big one was the day I made the discovery that I thought it was selfish to have all the money you could want. And I was like, where did that belief come from? And later I had a conversation with my mom and I was like, do you think it's selfish to have all the money you could want? She goes, yes, absolutely. And I was all, whoa. Because as soon as I thought it, I was like, wait, do I actually believe that? I don't think that, like, it's not, I don't, me having all the money I want doesn't take money away from anybody else. But that was the first time I made the correlation between, somehow, without her maybe ever actually saying those words, that filtered down to me in the course of my growing up. And I mean, she probably got that from her parents. Like
Exactly.
there's no blame here. It's just
Exactly.
so important for us to say, do I really believe this? And does this really serve me?
Yes, exactly. That's what I talk about with my clients. I truly believe on any given day we're all doing the best that we can, and that
Mhm.
includes our parents when they were raising us. They learned from their parents, and who learned from their parents, and on and on and on. And then we have the if you were brought up in a religion, then
Yeah.
the religion plays into it,
Yeah.
um, and of course, teachers, cousins, everybody kind of feeds into that mindset that you then have when you become an adult. And there's often a lot of untangling that needs to be done. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think of all of the people who grow up being the same political party that their parents were without ever questioning if that really aligns for them. That's
Yeah.
just yet another example of how that happens.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, there was, as I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of trauma that had to be dealt with. And so trauma comes with its own subconscious limiting beliefs and limiting mindset beliefs, that I needed to clear up and clean up in order for my body to recover.
Mhm.
So that was challenging, boy, that taught me a lot.
Yeah,
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 that taught me a lot, because those traumas. And again, I don't blame anyone. It's in the past. It happened. It made me the person that I am today. But yeah, there was a lot there that needed to be cleaned up. So
But
I
that
get
it's
it.
like you said, I just love how that brings us to where we are. I mean, you wouldn't maybe do this work if you
Exactly.
hadn't gone through that. And that's exactly how I feel about my story. I truly look back on my life and don't have any regrets, even from the like super hard things I would call traumas. They're what made me who I am. So they're
Exactly.
all part of the process.
Exactly. And they make us the powerful facilitators that we are
Yes, definitely.
because we get it, we understand.
Mhm.
And I know as well in my coach training, we're taught to acknowledge, but never say I understand, because you don't understand. There might be someone out there who was also chronically ill like me and who also had traumas similar to mine, but I can't possibly understand because I've not walked in your shoes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but you can either allow it to empower you, to fuel you, or you can allow it to keep you stuck.
Mhm.
And so that mindset, I talk about that a lot in my practice, because you can have two people who have the exact same illness and are receiving the exact same treatments, and one gets better and the other one doesn't. So what's the difference, right?
Yeah,
What's the difference?
absolutely.
Yeah. It's usually mindset. And it's usually, and a lot of times it has to do with what I call the planting of seeds. So a physician, a medical professional might say to a patient, your chances of recovery are very slim. Bam, they just planted that seed.
Mhm.
And if you choose to believe that, right? So part of my job is, and I know yours is too, um, pulling those weeds and planting healthy seeds in that mindset. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's part of writing a different, better story.
Writing
Yeah.
that different, better story. Yeah. So wouldn't you agree that, mindset is pretty much the key to everything?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. It was the game changer for me in terms of going from shadow artist to stepping into the arena.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So there was something else that I read on your website. I think it's in your LinkedIn profile, and I just loved it when I read it, and so I wrote it down here. I have an intimate relationship with my inner critic. In fact, I wrestle with imposter syndrome so often, I've turned her into an ally.
Yeah. So obviously, imposter syndrome was a part of my life for those nearly 2 decades that I was living in the shadows, like basically on a daily basis. That's why we have such an intimate relationship. She was always there. You're not enough. You have no new ideas. No one cares what you have to say. Just so many different stories. Um, and I just decided one day, this is, oh God, my favorite exercise, probably of all of the exercises that I offer to people. We're all familiar with vision boarding, right?
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
like it's all the rage. But the thing about vision boards is it's all of the things that you don't have yet. So it can conceivably create a feeling of lack for some people. Um, I decided one day, it was actually a New Year's Eve, and I didn't have plans. And I was like, here's what I want to do with my New Year's Eve. I'm going to make an accomplishments board. And on it, I put photos of everything that I was proud of. So from my catering days, like had this beautiful sushi platter that I had created. And I majored in costume design in college. So I have Halloween costumes that are really good, like epic. Photos of my different friend groups because I'm a great friend. I have a teenager in my life who I have such a special relationship with, and I had a welcome home banner that she had made for me. And I put all of these things on a vision board, but an accomplishments board. And that has become a mental Rolodex of reasons that I'm a badass. And it was just a way to counter my inner critic voice. She was always there. She was always there. And I was like, okay, you say this. Well, I'm going to find this that proves you wrong. And then I put it on the accomplishments board. And I kind of did that for every single thing that that voice would say to me. And it created armor. Like, I have turned the voice down on my inner critic so significantly that I almost don't hear her anymore. And that doesn't mean never. That doesn't mean I still don't get nervy before an interview,
Right.
but it is. And so that's posted next to my bed. So it's like the first thing I see when I get up in the morning. And it has changed everything for me. It has absolutely been the thing that I can go to when I'm having an off day, or I just don't feel good enough for some reason or another, or something doesn't go according to plan. I can go and I can look at that and I can remind myself of all of the things that make me special, all of the things that I would call my personal superpowers, my body of work, because that was such a big thing for me as a multi-passionate person for so long, was what do I have to show for my life? I've switched gears so many times. I don't have this thing that I've created. And now I'm able to just see myself as maybe the most interesting person at the cocktail party you're at, because I've done 100 different jobs.
Right.
But if we were, I always make this joke that multi-passionate people would be so useful in a zombie apocalypse, because if we were called upon to rebuild society from the ground up, like, we would need a doctor, of course, but the doctor would be good at doctoring. I could do 25 different things for the society. So being able to take stock of what makes you unique and special and gifted, and then go back to that list when that voice is just really loud in your head about why you can't do this thing, and it'll change everything for you. It is a absolute game changer. I love it.
I love that so much for so many reasons, but the main reason is because you didn't follow the crowd.
Definitely
I remember the day I threw my vision board in the trash because I said, you know what, this isn't working. So it's gone. And then when I met you and you told me about this accomplishment board, I was like, wow, now that is thinking outside of the box.
Yeah.
And maybe vision boards do work for some people. And if they work for you, go for it.
Sure.
It's just not my thing. So I love I love that idea. I think it's fantastic. And, I feel like we're kindred spirits because I also have had a half a dozen careers. And I think they say the average adult goes through 5 different careers. And we know some people don't. They settle in to something like, being a doctor or working the corporate life, and they stay and they put in their time. I can't, I'm too antsy. I've got to move on to the next thing, and I've got to be continually challenged. And I get the sense that you're the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't changed my mind in a few years now. And I attribute that to having given myself permission to do everything that I really want to do, to chase after all of the shiny objects that I want to chase after. Because counterintuitively, when you give yourself permission to do that, it becomes easier to focus on the thing that you are working on. Because I think when you tell yourself, no, I can't color in that adult coloring book because it's not a moneymaker, it's wasting time, whatever the story is,
Right.
it becomes harder to focus on what you are working on because you're being pulled in a different direction. Versus if you say, I can do that, I just have to do this thing first, I just have to wrap this up and then I can go do that. Suddenly it's not so hard to finish the thing that you are working on. So because I'm now allowing myself to do what I love, I feel like I'm a little bit settled. Now, talk to me in 2 years and we'll see if I still tell you that story. But that has been a really interesting thing to discover amongst the other multi-passionate people that I have interviewed is that once they have given themselves permission, they have found focus to be infinitely easier.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. So, tell us, who your ideal client is.
So my course that I'm running at the moment is called the Multi-Passionate Master Plan. And it really is for people who have 100 ideas and don't know where to start. So we go through finding that clarity piece and then, sort of whittling that down until you get to the 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 things that you want to pursue concurrently, and then figuring out how to break those down into tiny bite-sized chunks, and sort of schedule them out and guard your time and ritualize it so that it is yours and nothing can interfere, because we are the easiest people to cancel on ourselves, is the
Yes,
easiest
we are.
thing to do. So really people who need guidance in that way to sort of figure out, like, you maybe what your passions plural are, but figuring out which one to pursue first or how to kind of juggle the different things and still move the needle. Those are really my ideal client. And I'm in the process of creating a course that's like step 2, which is the step into the spotlight piece, somewhere down the line. But for now, I really love working with people that just need help getting started.
Perfect. That's beautiful. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so that would be my website, JennieO'Connor.com. I spell Jennie with an I-E, not a Y, and I spell O'Connor with an O-R, not an E-R. And you can find my podcast, The Everything Enthusiast, wherever you listen to podcasts, but the information about that is also at my website. And then I have some free, awesome resources to help you focus. I love to gamify things. So I have a quiz about finding your procrastination personality type. So then you can then, like, that is unique to you, so that you can then go to my website and find the tips and tricks to help you with that particular sticking point. I have a money mindset quiz that you can also, all of those things are available at my website as well.
Excellent. That's great. And so I encourage everyone who feels as though they haven't found their passion or they're not working in their passion yet to visit your website. My goal is to help people eliminate stress before it creates a chronic health condition. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're not living true to your passion and your ideal life, then you're probably under a lot of stress. So go to Jennie's website and check out some of her resources. And before you start having aches and pains and like for me, I ended up on full disability for a decade. And so if I can prevent that from happening to even one of our listeners today, my job is done.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we close up here, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I just think that's it. I love to tell my listeners to do the thing. Like, there are 7 days in a week and some day isn't one of them. So just get out there and do the thing. And if you need someone to cheerlead for you, I am always here.
That's excellent. And you can be our creative fairy godmother, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. All right, everybody, we're going to end today's episode, and thank you for tuning in. Put any questions that you have for us in the comments section, and we'll be sure to address those. Thanks, and have an awesome day. Bye now.
Thank you, Teresa. Bye-bye.